Into his office, the only room in the building with carpet. I stand grimly in front of his desk, fiddling with my hair, a mop of loose curls that always escapes its elastic. On the desk is a photograph of the Greevy family, 2 girls in summer dresses, and a baby in the arms of a pretty woman with ebony skin smiling into the camera. I'm in so much trouble. "Don't sit down," he says, lowering himself into his big office chair. "I don't want you here that long." He puts out his hand for the note from Mrs. Callahan, tips back in his seat, and takes a long breath as he reads. Then I see his expression change. He sits up straight, staring hard at me. "You walked out of English class without permission. You then went to your locker to conduct a chemistry experiment?" he says, his voice rising. "A chemistry experiment in your locker." "I was just, storing the experiment to bring home later. But I thought I smelled leaking gas." "Did you say leaking gas?" Suddenly, his hand is on the phone, his eye on the clock. "But it wasn't," I add quickly. "It was only residual fumes, so I came back to class and—" I see him relax about the experiment. That is, the worry is gone, but here comes the anger. "So you're storing chemistry experiments in your locker that stops now, by the way, and you walked out of an in-class essay for which you now have a mark of 0. Are you trying to sabotage yourself?" He shakes his head as though ridding himself of a bad thought. "Everyone knows you can write an essay. Didn't I read that you won a big prize for a science essay?" The newspaper announced it last week. A big cash prize, money my mother and I desperately need. But the essay Greevy is talking about, the one that got me the prize, might be the worst mistake I've ever made. If we didn't need the money so badly, I'd rip that prize-winning paper into little pieces. Greevy says, "You want to tell me what's really going on?" I keep my mouth shut. I'm hardly going to tell him I fudged my entry for an international science prize. Or worse, that my mother keeps borrowing money from a loan shark, his name is Biba, who is now threatening me for repayment. I found him leaning against my car this morning, looking like the gangster that he is. He pulled out a square of newspaper from his back pocket, a clipping of the article that mentioned my prize. "You won some cash," he said. An accusation. "So why haven't you paid me?" I chewed on my thumb, unsure what to say. It's hard enough for me to speak up for myself, let alone when someone like Biba is glaring at me. I mumbled something about not having the money yet and having to go to Sweden to collect it. "Sweden? You're lying." He knows someone like me never goes anywhere, at least not out of the country. But I wasn't lying. Not about that, anyway. "I wish this piece of junk was worth the money you owe me," he said, gesturing at my car, then kicking at a tire with his boot. "You don't make me wait for my money too long, understand?" This took place only a few hours ago as I was setting off for school. Now, in Greevy's office, I try to hold it together as he rants about my grades. Then he says, "How am I supposed to sign you off for a long absence just before Christmas break so you can fly off to Switzerland when you aren't keeping up with your work here?" Sweden, not Switzerland. They hold the science for our future conference in Stockholm, but I don't think it's wise to correct Dr. Greevy. "I asked you a question," he says. A question. Oh, God. What was it? Oh, yeah, about signing me off for an absence. I say, not knowing how to answer. "We are talking about an entire school week," he says, shaking his head as though it's an outrageous idea. "It's very important to my family," I squeak. "We owe thousands to Biba. The money from the science prize is my only way of paying it. But I've got to participate in the conference in Stockholm first." Greevy returns to his files. After a long pause, he says, "I will reluctantly grant you the time, but you need a high school diploma, you understand? Please keep that in mind on your way to Switzerland." Greavy was never going to